Welcome to another episode of Historical Markers. We are today still in the Chickamauga battlefield. Today I'm standing on the corner of Lafayette and Dyer roads, and that's where we're going to start this episode, and let's look at the markers around this area. This is the 6th Battery, Ohio Light Artillery. Soon after daylight, the battery occupied a position in reserve on the ridge west of what is now known as Lytle Station. About 8 o'clock, Wood's division moved to the front line, relieving Negley's division. The battery followed Harker's brigade, and 2 sections took position on this line about 10 o'clock, firing 32 rounds with good effect. Soon after 11 o'clock, while the brigade was moving by the left flank, the battery opposite its center, the Confederates broke through the line, driving back guns, caissons, and fragments of regiments in great disorder. The battery, being entirely cut off from the brigade, moved to the ridge west of the Dyer field, took position to play on the Confederates if opportunity offered, and when all Union troops in that part of the field had fallen back, followed them and encamped near Rossville. Casualties of the battle: 1 enlisted man killed, 1 officer and 7 men wounded, 7 horses wounded. Here's the Indiana 82nd Regiment Infantry, Hunter, 1st Brigade, Connell, 3rd Division, Brannan, 14th Corps, Thomas, on Sunday, September 20th, 1863, from 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. And we are just down the path from the Ohio Light Artillery marker we just read. Here on the edge of Dyer Field is Negley's division, Thomas's Corps. This tablet marks the left of the division during the night of September 19th. It was ordered from this position to the extreme left by General Thomas about 7:30 or 8 a.m. the 20th. General Rosecrans, being then present with Negley, directed that Beatty's brigade, then in reserve in the Dyer field, be sent at once, the others to follow as soon as they could be replaced by other troops of Wood's and Davis's division. Stanley's brigade was relieved soon after 9:30 a.m. and Sirwell's after 10. And this is Wood's division, Crittenden's Corps. During the night of the 19th, Buell's and Harker's brigades, Wagner's brigade garrisoning Chattanooga, were withdrawn from near Vineyards to the slope of Missionary Ridge west of Dyer's house and beyond the Crawfish Springs Road. Early in the morning, Wood was directed to relieve Negley on this ground. This was not accomplished until after 9:30, when the last of Negley's troops passed to the left, and Wood's line with Barnes' brigade of Van Cleve's division, which had come forward with Wood, was closed to the left on Brannan's division upon the supposition that Brannan had responded to an order sent him to move to the support of the left. Wood was ordered at 10:45 a.m. by General Rosecrans to close rapidly on Reynolds and support him. Brannan, being attacked at the moment of receiving the order, held his line. Wood, obeying literally, drew out of line and moved to the rear of Brannan toward Reynolds. Barnes' brigade, at the beginning of the movement, was dispatched to bear support on the extreme left, just as Harker's brigade, moving next in rear of Barnes, had gained the rear of Brannan. Longstreet moved with a column of 3 divisions of 8 brigades up on Wood's late front at the Brotherton House, penetrating the line, dispersing Buell's brigade, which was following Harker, and taking Brannan's line in reverse. Harker's brigade promptly moved back into the Dyer field, attacked the head of the enemy's column with great vigor, which gave Brannan a chance to rally his command on Snodgrass Hill, where Harker soon joined him and held the left of the line on that part of the field until night. Fragments of Buell's brigade rallied on Snodgrass Hill, where General Wood, in person, established his headquarters and cooperated with General Brannan in the defense of the position. Buell's Brigade. The brigade, having advanced from its bivouac west of Crawfish Springs Road, took position here about 9:30 a.m., forming the right of the division, Harker's brigade being on its left. Soon after, the 100th Illinois, being the left of the front line of the brigade, advanced the support of its skirmishers, crossed the Lafayette Road, and was driven back with the loss of its colonel wounded and captured. When the division was ordered to the left of the brigade, was caught in flank and broken up, and its battery captured. Colonel Buell rallied part of the 58th Indiana on Snodgrass Hill. Then directly in front of those two markers is the Illinois 100th Infantry, Buell's Brigade, 11 a.m., September 20th, 1863. Moving back toward Lafayette Road, on the other side of the field, we see this small sign here is Culpeper's SC Battery, had 3 guns. McNair's Brigade, Johnson's Division, September 20th, 1863 at 11:30 a.m. And then we have the Left Wing Army of Tennessee. Stewart's Division attacked at 11 o'clock, and after terrific fighting and an advance of one part of his line beyond the Chattanooga Road, was obliged to retire to the line from which he first advanced. Johnson's division, followed by Law and Kershaw, passed through the gap made by the withdrawal of Wood's division from the Union line at Brothertons. Johnson moved through the Dyer fields and assaulted Snodgrass Hill near Viditoes. Law pushed north through the woods on the east of the Dyer field and was repulsed near its northern boundary. Kershaw followed Law, passed over the shattered lines of the latter, and assaulted Snodgrass Hill. Hindman, after pursuing Sheridan's and Davis's divisions to the high ground west of the Crawfish Road and north of Widow Glenn's, joined Johnson's troops near Viditoes. Preston was moved up from the vicinity of Hall's Ford to the Brotherton House, and marching from the latter point at 4 p.m. assaulted Snodgrass Hill at 4:30 on the left of Kershaw's division. At sundown, Stewart moved over the works which had been held by Reynolds, captured a number of prisoners, and bivouacked near the Kelly House. Kershaw's, Johnson's, and Hindman's divisions continued to assault Snodgrass Hill unsuccessfully until sundown. At 6 o'clock, Steedman's division, formed the right of the Union line on Snodgrass Hill, was withdrawn under orders to the next ridge in rear. General Longstreet's troops followed and at dusk occupied a part of Snodgrass Hill, from which Steedman had withdrawn, and the ravine to the north of it. And here we have the Brotherton House on the corner of Dyer Field. Looks like there's actually an upstairs area. War comes to the Brothertons. The great battle raged around this family farm. At the time of the Battle of Chickamauga, George and Mary Brotherton and their children lived in a log house here. In the surrounding fields, they grazed cattle and grew corn and hay. To escape the battle, some of the Brothertons and other local families took refuge in a ravine about a mile from here. There they endured hunger and cold and prayed for their boys serving in the Confederate Army. Tom Brotherton, one of the sons, played a key role in the battle because Tom knew every pig trail through these woods. General Longstreet, commander of the Confederate left wing, employed him as a scout. Tom served with pride, telling his brother Jim, It's a sorry lad that won't fight for his own home. Jim Brotherton also fought for the South. After the battle, Adeline Brotherton, the youngest daughter, returned to the cabin in search of food. Finding 4 of their cows had miraculously survived the battle, she prepared milk for the refugee families. However, the hundreds of wounded Union and Confederate soldiers she saw here aroused her sympathy, and she gave milk to them. The Confederate Breakthrough. A sledgehammer-like Confederate attack smashed the Union line. The decisive event of the Battle of Chickamauga occurred here on September 20th, the second day of the battle. At 11:10 a.m., just after the last of General Wood's Union Division had pulled out of line behind you, and before other Federal units could move north to fill the gap, the Confederate Army struck. 8 brigades, about 11,000 men, of Longstreet's Confederate left wing swept across the Lafayette Road in front of you and charged a thin line of Federal skirmishers just behind you at the edge of the woods. The attack surprised the Federal divisions of Wood, Davis, and Sheridan, who were in motion and unprepared to fight. So overwhelming was the assault that nearly 1/3 of the Union Army was driven from the field, including its commander, General Rosecrans. Remnants of shattered Federal units tried to check the Confederate advance, but without success. The Confederates now had an opportunity to surround and destroy the Union Army. So directly in front of us is Lafayette Road, and if we turn around, there's the wooded area where the Union troops would have been. And this is for Missouri. It says to Bledsoe's Missouri Battery. All right, here's a marker. It's right up against this fence. Let's see what we can do with it. This is Johnson's Brigade. It says this brigade, the center of its division, moved at 11:10 a.m. from the first crest east of the Brotherton House and reached this position under a heavy fire of artillery and infantry. The advance from this line to the Dyer fields was resisted by a front and flank fire from Haig's brigade of Davis's division, but the brigade struck Haig's men in flank and drove them. Upon reaching the Dyer fields, it passed over the ridge on its west side and took part during the afternoon in the assaults of Snodgrass Hill. And here we have Beatty's brigade, Van Cleve's division, Crittenden's corps, Brigadier General Samuel Beatty at 4 o'clock. S. Beatty's brigade, with Dix on its right, had been forced back to this position by Stewart's division. With the assistance of the 9th Indiana, the 124th Ohio, and 41st Ohio of Hazen's brigade, they were able to make a brief stand, but at 4:30 the entire line was driven from position by Stewart's troops, advancing from the front, and Johnson's brigade of Johnson's division from the right. The line was rallied west of the Dyer field and bivouacked on the slope west of the Crawfish Springs Road. And this is Indiana's tribute to her 9th Regiment Infantry, Colonel Isaac C.B. Suman, Commander. Let's get a little closer to see if we can read this. September 19th, this regiment went into action near the Brock Field about 2 p.m. and lost heavily. Near 3:30 p.m., retired and refilled boxes in the vicinity of the Poe House, moved to this point, there confronting an advancing column of the enemy in overwhelming numbers, and compelled it to pause, engaged it for 30 minutes, and lost heavily. 3 officers were killed. September 20th at daylight, in line at southeast corner of Kelly Field, and held its line until 3:30 p.m. at Snodgrass Field, assisted in repulsing Longstreet's last assault near dusk, was sent to the right of Brannan's division, and after the capture of the 3 regiments on the right and some of its own men, fired upon the capturing force and held its position until 8 p.m. when it withdrew. And let's go around and look at the front of this. Here it says 9th Regiment, Indiana Infantry, 2nd Brigade, Hazen, 2nd Division, Palmer, 21st Corps, Crittenden. Hazen's Brigade, Palmer's Division, Crittenden Corps. Being relieved in the Brook Field soon after 3 p.m. of September 19th by Turchin's Brigade, Hazen's Brigade retired to the Poe Field to replenish ammunition. 3 of its regiments, the 9th Indiana and the 124th Ohio and the 41st Ohio, were dispatched to the Brotherton Field to assist Dick's and S. Beatty's brigades, and were forced back with those troops by the advance of Clayton's and Bates' brigades of Stewart's division. The brigade was finally assembled near the Poe House, and at dusk was dispatched to the assistance of Johnson's and Baird's divisions, then heavily engaged in the vicinity of the Winfrey House. Their help was not needed, as the fighting soon ceased, and Palmer's division bivouacked on the east line of the Kelly Field near its southern limits. Van Cleve's division, Crittenden's Corps. While the 1st and 2nd Brigades of Van Cleve's division, the 3rd Brigade having been left near Lee and Gordon's Mill, were falling back before Stewart's attack from the east of the Lafayette Road, one section of the 26th Pennsylvania Battery, Lieutenant S.M. McDowell, and 4 guns of the 7th Indiana Battery, Captain George R. Swallow, took position on this line about 4 o'clock. The division rallied upon the artillery and remained in position, fighting for half an hour when the artillery had exhausted its ammunition. The line being then flanked on its right by troops from Bushrod Johnson's division, while sustaining a fierce attack from Clayton in front, fell back to the high ground west of Crossfish Springs Road, where it remained for the night. This was September 19th at 4 p.m. And this tall marker is for the Pennsylvania Light Artillery, Battery B, 26 Independent, Samuel Beatty's Brigade, Van Cleve's Division, Crittenden Corps, in action in this position the afternoon of September 19th of 1863. This is Battery B, the 26th Pennsylvania Light Artillery. About 1 p.m., the battery with General Sam Beatty's brigade at a double-quick moved from near Lee and Gordon's Mill to the left. When near Brothertons, the brigade formed in double line with the battery in rear. The battery was ordered to follow the brigade closely and moved in this way 1/4 of a mile, obliquing to the left, when the enemy was encountered. The 4 smoothbore guns were moved by hand to the front, opened with canister, and fired rapidly. But it was impossible to check the advancing enemy. The infantry on the right fell back through the battery. The horses and the 3 pieces were nearly all shot, and 1 limber was blown up. The right half battery had time to limber up and retire with the infantry. It came into position on this ridge and again opened fire, remaining until the ammunition was all expended, when it was compelled to retire. One piece was disabled and abandoned here. The battery joined the 7th Indiana and encamped for the night. At this place, the battery received 2 smoothbore cannon, which had been captured from the enemy. Well, I hope you liked this episode. Please like and subscribe, and let us know what you'd like to see in the future. We're going to continue here on the Chickamauga battlefield for probably several more episodes. I don't know how many episodes this is going to take. I know we've already done a lot, but there's a lot more markers to go. So let's continue on with the Chickamauga battlefields.